Hello, grade 12. This is term 4, chapter 8, section 2, and we're still discussing revolutions. Now, to start earlier than the French Revolution, by the end of the 1600s, the revolutions started to take place in many areas around the world. The English Revolution was the first revolution to happen. It was around 1688. It started with the Reformation and the change in the religion, and then it moved to the changes in the art, literature, and the government. Next in line was the American Revolution, which we studied back in grade 10, and it happened around the 1700s. As we all know, it was between the British and the colonies in the new land. It ended with the total colonial control, and a new country was formed. When we discussed this year, we talked about the French Revolution and what happened and what were the reasons of the French Revolution and how did it end. After the French Revolution, during 1848, the Italian Revolution started. There were organized revolts in the Italian city-states that were led by the people who wanted liberal government. Now, as you can see, there's one thing common between most of these revolutions is that the people, they always want change, and this change is mainly or always a political or a governmental one. Next, around the 1918s, was the German Revolution. It was driven by civil conflicts at the end of the First World War. And the results of the German Revolution were that the imperial government was replaced by a republic one. Again, it's what the people wanted. Now, after these series of revolutions, the Congress of Vienna, which was an estate or a body, tried to restore some old monarchies back with great effort, but it failed. What is the Congress of Vienna? It's a meeting that was held that consisted or collected a lot of ambassadors or delegates or representatives of the European states, and it was held in Vienna. After the fall of Napoleon Bonaparte, this international conference was created. Why? Because they wanted to create a balance among the European countries in order not to give one country more power than the other and to maintain peace and stability between the European continents. What were the goals behind the Congress of Vienna? One, to prevent future French aggression with strong countries. They did not want conflicts to happen between the strong countries and France. Two, to restore the balance of power, just like we said earlier, so that no country would be a threat to the others and no country would hold or possess more power or authority on the rest of the European countries. And the third and underlying but main reason was that they wanted to return the royal families and the monarchies back just like before the revolutions. Now, there were certain political schools that taught different philosophies about societies and politics. We have three schools: conservatives, the liberals, and the radicals. You always hear these three words. What do we mean by these three words? Conservatives, these were the wealthy people, the property owners, the nobles. As we all know, we call them the elites in any country, in any revolution. They want to keep the traditional way. They want to keep the old way where they benefit the most. So the conservative school is the school of the elites, the school of the old people, the school of the nobles, the property owners, the wealthy people who want to keep things as it is and they do not want any changes. Two, the liberals. The liberals were middle class. As you can relate to the French Revolution, we called them the bourgeoisie. And in the American Revolution, they were the wealthy merchants, the sons of liberties, the educated people. So the liberals are usually the middle people, the middle class people who are made up of leaders and merchants, and they want to give more power to the people, but yet they still want rules to follow. Now, there's always the extreme of everything, and these are the radicals. If you remember Robespierre, he was a member of the Jacobins who were considered as the radicals or the extremists. They want radical changes. They want drastic changes. They do not want to keep things the same. They do not want mild changes. They want everything from zero, from scratch, to be changed. They believe that the governments should serve the people. They believe that the governments should practice the ideals of the Enlightenment and the French Revolution. They believe that a person have his three rights, life, liberty, and property, and therefore anything that they do not like should be changed. So these are the three schools, or the three ideas, or the three philosophies that people all around the world are divided into. As these three schools started debating, what should we do? Should we keep things the same? Should we extremely change everything? Should we keep things 50-50? The idea of nationalism, which Napoleon Bonaparte introduced a while ago, started to emerge. What does nationalism mean, or what does it believe in? It believes that people's great loyalty should not be to a king or to an empire, but instead it should be to a nation, to the people. These people should share a common culture, a common history, and common interests. According to the movement, the nation is going to have an independent government which is not related to one particular country, that is known as a nation state. This nation state defends the whole nation's territory and way of life, and it represents the nation to the rest of the world. What does this mean? It means that all the European countries should unite together. They are to be called Europe, or one nation. They're not supposed to be called France, Spain, Italy. They're not supposed to be divided into different people and different countries, but instead they are going to be one nation with common culture, common history, common interests, and they are not going to have separate kings or monarchies, but instead all of Europe is going to have one government called the nation state, and this nation state represents the rest of the world. Now, who were the people who supported this idea or this movement? They were the liberals and the radicals, the ones who wanted drastic changes and the ones who wanted minimal or intermediate or some kind of change. Of course, the elites or the conservatives did not like this idea because being one does not come to their benefit. Now, nationalism gave people with a common heritage a sense of identity and a goal of creating a homeland. The people who supported nationalism believed that they could be one body, one entity that share the same culture, and they can all work for the benefit of one good. Now, this is the idea that nationalism created. The nation state is the center of all of the area. They're going to share the same or the common culture, religion, nationality, territory, language, and history. History is usually a common past and common experiences. So all Europeans, they share, for example, different origins, but they all have common history, which is that they survived, for example, the Black Plague. So they're going to share a common history. They're going to share, they all talk with different dialects, but they're going to pick one dialect or one language to become their national language. The territory is going to get larger, and instead of dividing the area into different countries, there will no longer be countries, and it's going to be called one land. Again, they're going to have different nationalities, but one only will be their ethnic language or their ethnic nationality. The religion will also be shared by all or most of the people. And finally, the culture, the way they live, the food, the dress, the behavior, is also going to be summarized and reshaped to fit all the countries. Now, what are the positive results that might show up of nationalism? Is that the people with differences are going to overcome their differences for the greater good or for the common good. The French and the English and the French and then the Spanish and the Italian, they're all going to forget their differences. Why? For the greater good, for the common good. We're going to be one big family. Let's go work for this. Second thing, we're going to have democratic governments because now one government is ruling all of us. So they are not going to have these problems of let's conquer more land. Second thing is there will be no colonial rule. As we said, there will be no problem of territories. France does not want to rule England, and England does not want to conquer Spain. We are all one big happy family. The competition among the nations, instead of they're competing each other for their own benefits, they're going to compete again for the greater common good. We're going to compete, we're going to result with technological advances. Why? So we can come up with the best for our nation. Now, of course, for every idea, there are negative results. What are the negative results? Number one, the minorities are always going to be left out. We are going to vote for everything. The minorities, the ones who are with the least number, least religion, least votes, their opinion are not going to be taken into consideration. Now, some extreme nationalistic movements might show up, like the Nazis and the Jacobins. They were radicals. They were nationalistic movements. They wanted the best for their own nation, but they wanted in a very extreme way, which resulted in the abolishment or the death of all the other nations. And finally, even though competition was a good thing, sometimes this competition might lead to war. So, nationalism, just like any other idea, had its pros and cons. Now, what you have to do is you need to go back to your book. You have 4 examples that discuss nationalism in different countries. The first case is about nationalism in the Balkans. The second case is about nationalism in France. The third case is about nationalism in Russia. And the fourth case is about nationalism in Italy and Germany. You are free to pick only one example to study, only one example of nationalism in one of these 4 areas. When you pick the area, you need to know all the details about how was the country before nationalism, what happened, and when nationalism was applied, how did nationalism affect the country. You need to go back to this diagram and tell me how did the nation state affect all these criteria in the new formation after the nationalism. This will be our discussion in the session and in the extra care sessions, and you will submit what you found out or your notes about this part that you took during this week and the coming week, because this will be part of your term exam. Please, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask me in the extra care session. Thank you.